Okay, that was literally one of the worst, most partisan political. It wasn't even about the State of the Union. It was a Joe Biden 2024 campaign speech. It was full of lies, misinformation, out and out lies, obfuscation, demagoguing people, gaslighting us. One of the most ridiculous things. Okay, and now I'm going to give you guys my analysis, and I took some notes throughout this. If you didn't see it, this is all you're going to have to watch because I've got every single important point here, okay? So he comes out and he starts talking so fast. He's Joe Biden. Oh my gosh, we're going to Joe Biden. I'm going to get my State of the Union speech. And we're all just like, whoa, what is going on? We've never seen Joe Biden like that. I think a lot of people are wondering what kind of drugs was Joe Biden on tonight because then an hour and a half later, now he's all of a sudden talking slow and starting to act more normal, and it was just bizarre the way. And then he was angry, viciously. Thank you, Mix-a-Lot. Appreciate that a lot, man. He was viciously angry, and just very, very talking very, very fast, very, very weird. And then he starts out and he congratulates Hakeem Jeffries on being a black man. He literally congratulated Hakeem Jeffries for being black. He was like, I couldn't believe it. He was like, and congratulations to Hakeem Jeffries for being the black minority leader. And it's like, why don't you congratulate Hakeem Jeffries for being a good leader or being a good representative or something like that? He literally congratulated Hakeem Jeffries on his skin color. Very, very weird, very, very strange stuff. He also, this is the gaslighting, okay? He came out and he's pretending as if he's this unity candidate, and he gave a big, big, huge congratulations to McCarthy and the Republicans. And he very, very, very beginning of the speech, he starts talking about how he wants to work with the GOP and how he's bipartisan, and they did all these bipartisan accomplishments and all of this stuff. And it's just bizarre because Joe Biden is the most divisive, toxic president we've ever had. Some of the speeches, that red-blooded background speech that he gave was one of the most caustic, negative speeches. He's been one of the most divisive candidates, calling Trump supporters and Republicans Nazis and extremists and fascists and insurrectionists and saying that they should be locked up and saying that they're the greatest threat and all this horrible, horrible stuff. And then for him to come out and pretend like he wants to work with Republicans and that he's so, he's a unity candidate. It was extremely frustrating, to say the least. And then he also said that he passed the most significant law ever, which is this law about the toxic burn pits. Look, I think that's an important piece of legislation, but it's hard to say that that's the most significant law ever. He said that, just really, really weird. And then, the other thing about this Biden speech, this State of the Union, it was cliche after cliche after cliche after cliche. He kept talking about how we got to have the backbone of America, and you got to have a good soul. This is for the soul of America, and we're going to do an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, and we want to have people pay their fair share, and blah, blah. It was literally just a bunch of cliches. I don't know. Do Democrats find this stuff convincing? Democrats find it convincing when Biden comes out and talks about how this is for the backbone of America, and we're going to get the good soul for America, and we're going to have an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, and this, that, and the other thing. And I got a whole bunch of other cliches we'll get to, but the whole speech was just cliche after cliche after cliche. It was a joke. And then I couldn't believe this. He actually was like bragging about the economy. He was actually trying to say that like the economy is all wonderful. He even mentioned gas prices. He was bragging about gas prices and food prices. He specifically mentioned gas prices and food prices. That's why this is like, it's gaslighting. Gas prices are way up since when he took office. Food prices are way up since he took office. Everybody agrees the Biden blowout spending packages that Biden and the Democrat Congress between 2020 and 2022, that triggered the inflation and started the inflation. We are dealing with sky-high gas and food prices and have been because of Joe Biden's blowout multi-trillion-dollar spending packages. Everybody agrees with that. That's what tipped the inflation and started it, okay? And he has the gall to come out here and then to brag to us about gas prices and food prices. It is absurd. It's gaslighting. It's misinformation. It's lies. It's false. It's cliched. It's a joke. The other thing he mentioned was like he said like take home pay is up or something or wages are up, and it was like everybody was like, no, that's false, Joe Biden. When you actually take into account the inflation you triggered and the inflation you started, that's false. Take home pay is down. Real wages are down. For him to come out and start bragging about the economy is just staggering. And then, of course, he used statistical tricks to talk about job creation and all these other factors when it's like, okay, Joe Biden, we know that a lot of this stuff is because of COVID, and the spending under Trump was because of a Democrat Congress blowing out COVID spending. And then for him to come in and say that he did all this stuff and new jobs and reduced the deficit without mentioning that, oh, that's all just because of COVID and the Democrat Congress. And then now it's misinformation. It's misleading. It's lies. And then, of course, you know, he started then bragging about some of his accomplishments. Look at, okay, Biden has not accomplished anything except trillions and trillions and trillions in spending. And he kept mentioning it. That's all the Democrats have. Their policies are so weak and so pathetic. All they have is, hey, we can spend more other people's money. And then for us to sit out here in the heartland and to watch these politicians in Washington, D.C. all happy and laughing and joking, and they're all rich and wealthy and they're having a good time and they're getting fat and happy off of our taxpayer dollars, while meanwhile, we can't even afford to get groceries or go on road trips anymore because of how horrible this economy is because of their spending of our money. It is grotesque to sit here and have to see this. It's disgusting. And then for him to brag about all the billions and trillions in spending when we're paying for it and suffering every single day with the inflation and stuff, it made me angry. To see Joe Biden brag about his quote-unquote accomplishments, which is nothing more than blowout spending, deficit spending, which is not an accomplishment. That's a bad thing. That's not something to brag about. That's something to be ashamed of. Joe Biden ought to be ashamed of what he's done to this economy, what he's done to our deficit and our debt. What he's done is just an absolute horrible, horrible thing. And then, of course, you know, He just wants to talk about Trump. Everything for Biden, it's just, oh, well, Trump. And he always, my predecessor this, my predecessor that, my predecessor this, my predecessor. Shut up about your predecessor, Joe Biden. It's like, look, I agree. Donald Trump signed way too many spending packages from Congress. But guess what? Democrats controlled Congress for the last 2 years of the Trump administration. Democrats controlled the purse strings. That's why we got massive blowout spending. And, of course, Trump supported it. And so, but for Joe Biden to then justify his spending by saying, oh, well, Trump spent more too, it's pathetic, it's childish, it's weak. That's all Joe Biden's got. Well, Trump did it too. Trump did it too. And it's like, okay, so, but guess what, Biden? Trump didn't trigger inflation. Trump didn't pass multi-trillion-dollar spending packages after we'd already spent $5 or $6 trillion on COVID stuff, and then come in and do another one because you want to give a bunch of pet projects to all your buddies and do special interest groups and give all these government contracts to your friends. Oh my goodness! Joe Biden and the Democrats, get it through your thick skulls. Just because Trump did it doesn't make it right. And it's like, it's so ironic. So Democrats want to. And Joe Biden, he's going to say, hey, well, you know, it's okay because Trump did it. As if Trump doing it now makes it right. So now Democrats think that if Trump did it, then it's a good thing. Because that's the Democrats' defense of everything. Everything that happens, their entire defense is, well, Trump did it. Trump did it too. Whether it's a spy balloon or whether it's deficit spending, well, Trump did it. Trump did it. It's just pathetic. It's just a joke. And then Biden was bizarrely angry multiple times throughout the State of the Union. He was genuinely angry. Like he lost his temper. He lost control. He had lost control of, thanks for the follow. He lost control of his temper. He was an angry person tonight. And it's very off-putting. I do not like it at all. The really worst part about this whole thing, though, is like, look, the State of the Union, the State of the Union speech is supposed to be an opportunity for the president to come and advise Congress and the American people about what's going on with the presidency, what's going on with our country, what's going on with the executive branch, what's going on with our economy, what's going on with our federal spending, what's going on with the military, and Joe Biden turned it into a campaign event. It was literally partisan politics. He literally came out and was talking about what he ran on. Joe Biden started this thing out talking about what I ran on in 2020, and I ran on this and I ran on that, and then he was talking about how he'll show up with the GOP for groundbreaking ceremonies for infrastructure bill projects. It was just crass. That's the only word I can think of what Joe Biden and how he acted tonight. It purely crass. It's like, this is supposed to be a serious thing where politics is not supposed to play into this. Certainly not crass partisan politics, but for Joe Biden to turn it into that, and then throughout the speech it got even worse and worse and worse. It just became he just began running for more, talking about then what he was going to run for, and then he was talking about all of the things that he wants to do, and it was a campaign event, and it's disgusting because this is a constitutional event. The State of the Union speech is literally defined in our Constitution. This is not supposed to be a raw, crass, partisan political event, and that's what Joe Biden turned into. He's disgraced America, he's disgraced the presidency, and he disgraced the State of the Union. And then, of course, he brought up tons of ideas that he got from Trump, like, bringing manufacturing jobs back. And then he said all construction materials have to be made in America. Okay, I guess we no longer believe in trade. And it's like, okay, and guess what their defense to that is? Well, Trump did it. Well, yeah, Trump was not a big fan of trade, and he did want stuff made in America. He did want manufacturing brought home. But he wanted that because of bad trade deals. Biden's not wanting this because he says we've got bad trade deals. No, he's saying this because he thinks it helps him politically. And Trump did it. It's ridiculous. And then, of course, most of what Biden had to say tonight, that he actually had like effective moments or whatever, was either free stuff, promising free stuff and just utopia, pure utopianism. And then, of course, also pure emotional arguments. And he talked about insulin, and he told a sad story about insulin, just a pure emotional argument. It was a logical fallacy. It was a raw, emotional based appeal, demagoguing and manipulating people into supporting him and his policies. Also that he could justify price controls. Never mind the fact that price controls do not work. Price controls do not work, but that's what he was. Price controls were tried in the Soviet Union. Price controls didn't work in the Soviet Union. Why would they work now? I thought I gotta make note. Bernie Sanders in a freaking mask was hilarious. Bernie Sanders in the audience wearing an N95 mask. Apparently, Bernie thinks we're still in the middle of a deadly pandemic. That was hilarious. Bernie Sanders wearing a mask. Wow. And then, of course, Joe Biden started bragging about how he's going to build a whole bunch of electric charging stations. It's like, Joe Biden, that's not your job. Your job's not to go around building gas stations. Since when is the president's job to go build gas stations, but not gas stations, but actually electric charging stations? How many previous American presidents had to spend their time going around building gas stations? But Biden thinks it's a great thing. He's going to go around and build a bunch of electric charging stations. Dumb. Waste of money. We can't afford it. It's stupid. It's not economic. Nobody wants it. If it was a good idea, the economy would do it without Biden going around and building charging stations. And then, of course, he blamed Trump for the deficit. Super, super weak by Biden to blame the deficit on Trump when we know for a fact that Democrats controlled Congress for those 2 years and passed all those spending bills. And then Biden came in and has been supporting massive blowout spending. And here we are coming up a debt ceiling. Here we are coming up on the debt ceiling, and the Republicans are trying to cut spending, and Biden won't allow it. we're gonna have the debt ceiling raised, and we want to cut spending. And Biden says, nope, we're just gonna raise. We just want more debt, more debt, more debt. We can't cut spending, can't cut spending. And then he's gonna come into the State of the Union and blame the debt on Republicans. It's ridiculous. It's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then why won't you agree? You know, if you think it's all the Republicans' fault and you'd be in favor of balancing the budget, well, then why don't you agree with the Republicans to cut spending before we raise the debt ceiling? He also said that he also said global warming is existential, which is hilarious. He's like, he spent like 5 minutes on global warming. He spoke for an hour and a half, speaks for an hour and a half, spends 5 minutes on global warming, but when he does talk about it, he says, oh, it's existential. We're all going to be dead. We're all going to be dead in 10 years. And if it's like, well, if it was some huge, horrible existential threat and we're all going to be dead in 10 years from global warming and it's an existential threat, wouldn't you spend more than 5 minutes on it? Wouldn't you leftists and Democrats live your lives a little bit differently if you really believed we're all going to die in 10 years from global warming? If it's an existential threat and it's going to wipe out humanity and it's going to wipe out civilization, maybe spend more than 5 minutes on it. It's just ridiculous. Of course, he lied about taxes. You know what's so pathetic too is he is still using the same phrase that Barack Obama used in 2008. Pay your fair share. Make sure the rich are paying their fair share. And again, it's a piece of propaganda. It's misinformation. Of course, the top 10% of earners pay 90% of all the taxes. So if you're 10% of the population and you pay 90% of the taxes, and that's not enough for Biden, that's not their fair share. Thank you, Altair. Appreciate that, Altair. But it's also just pathetic that Joe Biden is still using 2008 Barack Obama campaign slogan. The rich need to pay their fair share. It's like, really, Joe Biden? Well, Joe Biden, you've been in power in Washington, D.C. for 40 years. You've been the one writing the tax laws for 40 years. And now you want us to believe you when you're 80? You've been in D.C. for 40 years, and now when you're 80, now suddenly you're going to fix stuff? Give me a break. It's a false view. It's false. It's a false perception of who pays taxes. It's all class warfare. It's Marxist. It's horrible to see the American president pushing Marxism like that from during the State of the Union. And then, of course, he spent a bunch of time talking about these fees. And, well, you shouldn't have to pay a fee for a cell phone carrier, and you shouldn't have to pay a fee for an airline, and you shouldn't have to pay a fee for a bank, and you shouldn't have to pay for a fee for this. And it's like, it's just utopianism. It's like, the government, it's just bad economic policy. This is economics 101. If the government comes in and says, no more fees, no fees anywhere, nobody can charge fees, it's not just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Oh, good. No more fees, everybody. No more fees. No. If you ban fees, if the federal government banned fees, which is central planning, the Soviet Union tried central planning, price controls, and government control of the economy. It didn't work. It's not going to work this time. But it's like, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of economic policy, and Biden and the Democrats are relying on the fact that the American people won't pick up on this, because if the government just comes in and says bans fees, all fees are illegal, okay, that ripples through the economy. The companies that were charging fees then raise prices on something else to make up the difference. It's economics 101. It's bad economic policies, but it's Democrat policy. It's shallow. It's weak. It's pathetic. Yeah, guys, just ban fees. Hey, isn't that wonderful? Let's just ban fees, guys. No more fees. If you actually think that we can just have this, everything will be wonderful if the government just bans all fees. No more fees, guys. Just ban fees. If it was that easy, being good government and good economic policy would be pretty darn easy. But guess what? It's not that easy. The government just can't come in and say, no more fees. Nobody can have any fees anywhere. And then just have everything be wonderful. It's not how it works. It's bad economic policy. And then, of course, he wants to ban non-compete agreements. He did a lot of stuff that is the federal government interfering into state policy. Non-compete agreements, that's a state law issue. Every state has different non-compete law. And that's how it's supposed to be. Federal government, get out of the way. Who the heck does the federal government think it is regulating non-compete agreements? That is a state issue. The federal government has no authority to be doing that. But again, he just wants to ban non-competes as if just having the government ban it, having central planning is going to work. No, it's not. I already talked about how his speech was basically a campaign speech. It was very clear. This is the point when he was talking about banning fees, banning non-competes, all this stuff. It was a campaign speech. He wasn't advising Congress and the American people about what's going on with our country, what's the status of everything. He was campaigning. This was a 2024 campaign speech. After this State of the Union, 100%. Joe Biden is running for president. Of course, he's run for office since the 80s. He doesn't know what to do with his life if he's not running for president. So he is going to run. And it was clear from this speech that this was a 2024 campaign speech. He has degraded and debased the State of the Union into nothing more than a partisan campaign speech. It's sad to see them destroy the presidency and the State of the Union like this. And then, of course, again, he was talking about, let's give all the public school teachers raises, guys. Give everybody raises. Again, number one, that's a state issue. The federal government has no say or control over teacher salaries. That's an issue that's controlled at the local level and the state level. But it's like, again, it's just free stuff. It's Marxism. It's Biden coming in and saying, hey, guys, vote for me. I'll give everybody raises. Hey, more money. Do you want more money? Vote for me. I'll give you more money. It's like, dude, if economic policy was that easy, boy, life would be a lot simpler. But guess what? It's not. You can't just have the government come in and say, everybody gets raises. Give everybody raises. And then it's this wonderful, wonderful thing. Everybody got raises. Give everybody raises. Ban fees. And it's going to be wonderful. It's just they're relying on voters being incredibly uninformed. Because if you're an American and you actually think that everything can be wonderful and it'd be a really good thing if the government would just ban all the fees and then give everybody raises, I'm sorry that that's not how it works. Of course, and then I love he kind of made this comment about, and this is one of the instances where he got super angry, but about how police must be held accountable, and he's like, and most police are good people, but when they do something wrong, police must be held accountable, and it's like, they already are. Look at what happened to the police officer that killed George Floyd. Look at what happened to the police officers that killed Tyree. They've all been arrested and charged with murder, and then they're going to get, one was convicted and is in prison. The other ones are going to get convicted as well. Like, instead of saying, hey, we have to hold police officers accountable, it's like, maybe you ought to say, America's wonderful because we do, when police officers do something wrong, they are held accountable. They're already held accountable. Like, this is demagoguery and misinformation. They already are held accountable. We should be praising America and praising our justice system for holding our police officers accountable when they do something wrong. Not demagoguing and he's implying and sending this message that police officers aren't held accountable in the United States, and that's just false. It is false. It is a lie. Police officers are held accountable. We don't need to go vote for Joe Biden to make sure that police officers are held accountable when they commit crimes. They already are. Oh, man. Again, I thought this speech was very clearly 100% sign he's running for president. And then he tells this emotional story about a handgun, and then he says, ban assault weapons, ban assault weapons. It's like very, 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 very disturbing stuff. And, of course, PM made the great point that, so Joe Biden literally released the world's worst arms dealer. He released the world's absolute worst arms dealer, let him back out onto the streets, or let him back go to Russia to do more international arms deals for an NBA player or a WNBA player, and then he has the gall to want to take away our constitutional rights. Assault weapon bans are unconstitutional. They violate the Second Amendment. Joe Biden and the Democrats were openly calling to take away constitutional rights. That's what they are. Absolutely ridiculous. Straight up openly calling for violations of constitutional rights. And then he made this. He of course mentioned transgender kids. Joe Biden, he hit all of the left-wing radical issues. That's why I tweeted out he's an extremist. He is an extremist. He mentioned transgender kids as a State of the Union issue. Joe Biden brought up transgender kids in his State of the Union issue, and we know what the left is doing on that front, and we know how evil that is. And then he got all tough guy. He got all tough guy about America will defend our sovereignty and we will act to protect it as we just did this week. And it's like, no, Joe Biden, you didn't. You allowed the Chinese communist spy balloon to float over our country, and then you were hiding it from the American people, and you were not going to even tell us. You were covering it up for the communists. And then when the Americans spotted it, thankfully for people in Montana, then you shot it down after it finished its mission. You didn't act to protect our sovereignty. In fact, our sovereignty was violated and you did nothing. Joe Biden allowed our communist enemies to violate our sovereignty and to fly spy balloons into our airspace, and he did nothing. And then he has the gall to go onto the State of the Union and act like, I'm a big tough guy. I protected our sovereignty. I mean, again, it's just the amount of lies and propaganda and gaslighting is honestly staggering. And then, he finishes up his thing by talking about the unity agenda. It's just like, dude, Biden has called the American people Nazis and fascists and said that they need to be investigated and sicked the FBI on Trump supporters and given horrible speeches where he's very, very divisive. And then again, he has the gall to come out and pretend like he's some unity guy and he's united the country. It's gaslighting. You honestly start to think you're crazy when you hear this stuff because it's just so opposite of reality. His entire speech was this way. It was like everything he said, the entire speech, it was like the exact opposite of reality. It was bizarre. Claiming to be a unity and a unifier when he's one of the most divisive presidents we've ever had in our history of our country. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. And then, of course, Biden started talking about the opioid pandemic. And the Congress people started blaming him on its fault. Again, it's just so rich to hear Joe Biden pretend and act like he cares about the opioid pandemic and he's going to stop fentanyl at the border and stuff like that when he's allowed the border to be completely open. The drug cartels control the border. He's done nothing. He's turned over his administration to the radical open borders left, and he himself is a radical extremist now. And so, again, like, to hear Biden pretend like he cares about the opioid pandemic and that he wants to stop fentanyl at the border is pure gaslighting. Straight up 100% lies and misinformation. And then of course, he brings up January 6th and political violence and then says Paul Pelosi is a survivor of it. And everybody's kind of like, wait, what? The person that attacked Paul Pelosi was not even a Trump supporter. He was a leftist, and it had nothing to do with politics as far as we're aware. But Joe Biden directly connected January 6th and Paul Pelosi. Again, his entire speech was lies, misinformation, propaganda. It was one of the worst State of the Union speeches I have ever seen. It was a grotesque partisan campaign speech full of lies and misinformation. One of the absolute worst worst State of the Union and campaign speeches because he just turned the State of the Union into a campaign speech that I've ever seen in my life.